Eddie Murphy's childhood was shaped by sudden violence long before he became famous. When he was about 7 years old, his biological father, Charles Edward Murphy, was shot and killed during a domestic dispute involving his girlfriend. The killing abruptly removed his father from his life, leaving Murphy and his brother to grow up without him. The loss is rarely mentioned in discussions of his personal life, and Murphy himself has rarely addressed it publicly. In 2025, 35-year-old Michael Virgil died on board a Royal Caribbean cruise after allegedly being served more than 30 alcoholic drinks in a single day, according to a wrongful death lawsuit filed by his family. Court filings state that Virgil showed clear signs of severe intoxication before experiencing a violent outburst, during which he became disoriented and aggressive. Crew members restrained him as his condition worsened, and he later collapsed. Virgil was eventually pronounced dead on board, and his body was stored in the ship's refrigerated morgue until the vessel returned to port. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner later ruled his death a homicide, citing acute alcohol intoxication and restraint-related factors, and his family is seeking accountability from the cruise line for alleged over-serving and failures in response. These were the wonky teeth that ultimately got Ted Bundy convicted. Before that moment, Bundy had already escaped custody twice in 1977 while awaiting trial in Colorado. During his first escape, he was allowed to act as his own attorney and therefore wasn't put in handcuffs, which gave him enough freedom to slip away from guards and jump from a courthouse window. After being recaptured, he engineered a second escape by deliberately starving himself, losing enough weight to squeeze through a small opening in the ceiling of his jail cell. That second escape took him all the way to Florida, where he apparently still couldn't resist his murderous urges. While hiding out in Tallahassee, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house and carried out a brutal attack on 4 young women, leaving 2 of them dead. One of the victims, 20-year-old Lisa Levy, was bitten deeply on the left butt cheek during the assault, leaving behind a clear dental impression. Unlike Bundy's earlier crimes, which were built largely on circumstantial evidence, the bite mark was matched to his unusually crooked teeth and served as the key piece of evidence that finally sealed his conviction as a serial killer. In 1966, 17-year-old Franca Viola became the center of one of Italy's most disturbing criminal traditions, the matrimonio reparatore, a so-called rehabilitating marriage, where a rapist could escape prosecution by marrying his victim. Franca was kidnapped by Filippo Melodia and held captive for 8 days, during which she was repeatedly assaulted as Melodia and his accomplices tried to force her into the marriage that would legally erase his crimes. But Franca did something that no woman in Italy had ever done before. She said no. Her refusal didn't just defy her attacker, it defied the entire legal system, the cultural norms of her town, and the centuries-old belief that a woman's honor could be restored by marrying the man who raped her. When Franca and her family pressed charges instead, the community turned on them. Their property was burned, they were publicly shamed, and they lived under constant threats for refusing to participate in the ritual that protected rapists. Melodia was eventually convicted of kidnapping, rape, and intimidation, but the law that allowed rapists to walk free by marrying their victims remained in place for another 15 years. Article 544, the clause that effectively turned sexual assault into a negotiable family arrangement, was finally repealed in 1981. Scientists in Germany have captured something incredible on camera for the first time ever. They recorded wild rats snatching bats straight out of the air in total darkness, an unbelievable hunting behavior no one had documented before. Since rats have poor eyesight, they rely on their highly sensitive whiskers to detect subtle changes in air pressure and movement, even the faint air currents from a bat's wings. Researchers believe this eerie adaptation is what allows them to hunt in complete darkness, and the finding may also help explain why bat-borne illnesses like coronaviruses are spilling over into rodent populations. Deep in the Guyanese rainforest, Kyater Falls is nearly 4 times taller than Niagara. Its remote location means few people ever get to see it, and the surrounding cliffs host rare species found nowhere else on Earth. Beautiful, ain't it? NASA's New Horizons spacecraft captured this amazing footage of Pluto during its flyby in 2015, revealing frozen plains, towering ice mountains, and an unexpectedly active surface. The footage offered the first close-up look at Pluto in human history, and completely changed our understanding of the distant dwarf planet. Here's some insane footage of a domestic cat that's reached an astounding age of 29 years, the rough human equivalent of someone in their late 130s. Most house cats live 12 to 15 years, and even reaching 20 is rare. Cats that make it this far are often born with unusually resistant genetics that slow age-related organ failure, especially in the kidneys and heart, and that advantage is typically reinforced by consistent care in a low-stress environment. A doorbell cam caught this bird appearing to float in midair because the camera's frame rate synced perfectly with its wings. Each time the camera captured a frame, the bird's wings were in the exact same position, creating the illusion that it was suspended motionless above the driveway. In January of 2020, Storm Gloria completely battered the coast of Spain, whipping seawater rich in organic material into massive clouds of seafoam. Powerful winds blew the foam inland, piling it waist-high through the streets and swallowing storefronts, cars, and people. The surreal scenes were a side effect of a storm that also caused deadly flooding, widespread destruction, and multiple fatalities across the country. This was the shocking moment when an MLB pitcher realized his life was over. Former Red Sox pitcher Austin Maddox went from a World Series ring holder to a child predator after he was arrested in Florida in 2024. Investigators say he believed he was talking to a 14-year-old girl, unaware the teen was actually an undercover detective. When he arrived at the meeting place, officers pounced on him before he could even walk through the front door and arrested him immediately. The report says he had driven there intending to meet a teenage girl, part of a wider operation targeting child predators. Maddox was charged with multiple felonies and later sentenced to 3 years in prison, his mugshot replacing whatever was left of his brief baseball career. A man in Mantua, Italy is under investigation after police discovered he had kept his mother's corpse hidden inside their home ever since she died in 2022. He never reported her death. Instead, he placed her body in a sleeping bag in the laundry room where it eventually mummified. Over the next 3 years, he continued collecting her pension, pulling in tens of thousands of euros annually. When her ID expired in 2025, he tried to renew it by dressing up in a wig, makeup, and his late mother's clothes, hoping to pass as her. But staff grew suspicious of his deep voice and masculine features and alerted police immediately. Authorities compared photos, searched the home, and found the mummified remains, leading to charges for fraud, identity theft, and concealing a corpse. Russian fitness influencer Dmitry Nuyanzin has died after collapsing during a workout, and investigators say his body had been pushed to the absolute breaking point. The 32-year-old had recently been filming a 10,000-calorie bulking challenge while still cutting water for photo shoots and reportedly cycling stimulants and anabolic agents. Friends said he'd been complaining of dizziness and chest pain but kept training to keep up the content. When he collapsed at the gym, doctors couldn't revive him, and the autopsy showed his heart was severely enlarged and overloaded, more like that of a much older man. Experts concluded he suffered sudden cardiac failure triggered by a perfect storm of extreme overeating, chemical strain, dehydration, and relentless overtraining. Nicholas Kunzelman and Stephanie Hart Grizel survived the Columbine shooting in 1999, only to be mysteriously murdered less than a year later. On February 13, 2000, Stephanie went to visit Nicholas while he was closing the Subway restaurant just a mile from their high school. Hours later, an off-duty employee noticed the lights still on, walked in, and saw an unknown young man leaving. Inside, he found both Columbine teens shot to death behind the counter. Nothing was stolen, so it wasn't a robbery, and the witness gave a detailed description of the suspect, but he was never found. Investigators later uncovered a drug ring operation out of that Subway, but there was no link to the teens. To this day, the killer has never been identified. In May of 2025, 46-year-old Christy Crampton was arrested after a disturbing in-flight altercation with a child who allegedly called her fat and Miss Piggy. The two were returning from a trip to Disney World when the situation suddenly spiraled out of control. Witnesses say Crampton began striking the boy with her fists and a water bottle, even slamming his head against the airplane window. When questioned, she told police the child had been disrespectful and had pushed her arm away before she snapped. One witness told investigators the woman wasn't correcting the child, she was abusing him. Crampton was charged with felony child abuse and released on bond, while the child's identity, relation to her, and condition were not disclosed. Before gunning down Mahatma Gandhi in 1948, his assassin Nathuram Godse had already tried to kill him twice before. In 1944, he led a group that charged Gandhi with knives during a prayer meeting, and later that year, he confronted him again wielding a dagger. Both times he was caught but released. Gandhi, committed to his philosophy of nonviolence and forgiveness, reportedly refused to press charges. That mercy would prove fatal just 4 years later when Godse finally succeeded in his third attempt, firing 3 bullets into the man who preached nothing but peace.